Hello everyone, Turtlelags here, bringing you another AFK journey video. Today I will be filming a comprehensive guide to Supreme Arena, and the structure of this video will be as follows. First, we will briefly go over season faction talents, that way you understand how they work and which ones are best for Supreme Arena in particular. Second, we will go over season artifact spells. I will recommend the top 4 or 5 artifact spells for you to consider when building your team. Third thing we'll go over is just briefly talking about Magic V++ charms. These are special charm sets that will enhance the performance of your individual heroes. Four, we will go over the most viable Supreme Arena heroes from every season. I did take some additional notes, and I will break down basically what the most optimal heroes will be to allow you to perform very well in Supreme Arena. And then finally, fifth, we will go over the strongest team archetypes for Supreme Arena. So without further ado, let's begin. Alright, so first let's go over the season faction talents. As with every season, as you can see before you, there are 5 different factions: Lightbearer, Wilder, Mauler, Graveborn, and Celestial Hypogeans, and each one of these factions basically incentivizes you to form a team that is basically majority of that faction. So if we look into here, for example, beginning with the Lightbearer faction, if you form a team with at least 3 Lightbearers, you will basically get the advantage of having a really chunky Brutus 2.0 tank named Hogan, who will fall from the sky and basically tank for you and revive whenever he gets KO'd. And this has team building implications in the sense that you can actually build a team of 5 heroes without a tank. An example would be, say, like a Hugin, a Rowan, and Sonya with 2 DPSs, and you will use Hogan as your tank. So that is the Lightbearer faction. Now the next one here, the Wilder faction. Basically the way this one works is that if you have at least 3 Wilders on your team, 2 of your heroes that are on the glowy tiles, and usually this will be you want to put your glass cannon DPSs here or glass cannon healers here. These heroes will be invincible. They cannot take any damage and cannot be crowd controlled for 10 seconds, which is quite a bit of time considering that the most deadly Supreme Arena teams can end matches within 15 to 20 seconds. So quite a bit of time, and you have the ability to re-trigger the invincibility effect if you achieve certain objectives. And you actually get additional true damage for they call it the prime carriers. Prime carriers are any heroes within the glowy McDouble tiles. Okay, and actually when they go out of their invincibility, they gain a shield. So it's just pretty insane. This is why the Wilder faction is considered the most powerful, or if not the most powerful, the second most powerful faction talent in Supreme Arena. Alright, so moving on to the Maulers. Basically the way the Maulers works is that the prime carriers will mark the most damage dealing enemy as the prey, and essentially what happens is that your prime carriers will aggro onto the prey, and the prey's damage output will decrease. Specifically, prime carriers take 45% less damage from the attacks of their prey. And the prime carriers get additional advantages such as life drain to help replenish their health. They get attack boosts, haste boosts whenever the prey gets defeated. It's not a bad effect, but I would say that this is probably one of the weakest faction talents in Supreme Arena. And for this reason, Maulers have pretty much been out of favor this season. Alright, moving on to Graveborn. The way the Graveborn faction talent works is that essentially your prime carriers will steal attack percentage from the enemies as well as steal the enemy's HP. Yeah, so it's kind of like a vampire kind of effect. Not super great. I mean, you get explosions as well that deal a good amount of damage, and your prime carriers get stronger over time. They even get a shield equal to the HP lost by the enemy. It's a decent effect, but it's not really viable either. I would say Maulers and Graveborn faction talents, if you were to ask most content creators, they would say that these are the two weakest factions for Supreme Arena. And then finally we have the Celestial Hypogean faction. This one's pretty strong, probably the second most powerful in my opinion, because essentially what happens is the prime carriers will get additional energy and at the start of battle. 400 is a lot. That's almost halfway towards an ultimate. And if you take into consideration that a lot of the later heroes that have been released start with initial energy, you can have situations where you have heroes that ult almost right away. And on top of that, for every 4 ultimates cast, the excuse me, the prime carrier gets additional stat boosts such as 14% extra attack, 36% extra HP. Dark explosions get triggered. The damage of the prime carrier's first ultimate increases by 30%. It's very ultimate. It favors you casting your ultimates earlier, more frequently, and hitting harder with your ultimates. And this works especially well with the twins that already provide energy to your heroes to have them ult faster. It's like an ult battery, essentially. So very powerful. Okay, so now that we've gone over faction talents, let's briefly go over the artifact spells. Now, this season, it has the most faction spells, or I should say season spells released. We have a total of 10. This is more than last season, which I think had 7. So out of all of these artifacts, which ones are the most viable? I'll tell you which ones are not viable. It would be the Soulbound, Banishing, Snowman, Sanctum, and Ice Guard. Why is that? It's because they offer a little bit of defensive capabilities, but really it's all about deleting the enemy within the first 20 seconds. You have to shift your mindset to just ending the battle quickly. And so for this reason, you're going to favor the most hyper-offensive artifacts, which actually some of them offer defensive capabilities as well. For example, Lightforge spell, which is one of the top 5 spells out there, essentially what it does is that it blesses the rearmost ally to make it so that they are unaffected, meaning they cannot be crowd controlled, right? Very powerful. It's basically Enlightening Spell 2.0, and it provides additional stat boosts in the form of increased attack and life drain. And whenever they defeat or assist in defeating an enemy, they will gain additional stats. Not to mention later on, you also get additional physical and magic defense when that blessed ally KOs 3 enemies. So a very powerful spell. The CC immunity is actually quite impactful as well. The next one that's also quite powerful is Overcharge. This one is probably the weakest of the strong artifacts that you would consider in Supreme Arena. Overcharge, essentially, it makes the rearmost ally recover a ton of energy every second for 10 seconds. So in this case, 30 energy every second for 10 seconds. So you can expect that within a 10-second period, your rearmost ally will have gained an extra 300 energy, which is very good for just taking over a match. But because of the Light Forge spell, so actually most people will favor the Light Forge spell over the Overcharge spell. Although some people may consider this spell if they want to make an ally, such as Tasi, for example, who has a very powerful ultimate, get their ultimate off faster. Alright, so then the next one is going to be the Harmonic spell. Harmonic spell is very good because you get periodic buffs, and there's a lot of them. And this has, implications. There are some heroes like Dionyl that appreciate periodic buffs, and you do get a buff every 10 seconds, and they come in the form of attack percent, physical magic defense. If their HP ratio is above 50%, they gain 20 extra haste. If they're below 50%, gain 20 life drain. Basically, no matter the scenario, you're going to get a lot of benefits, various buffs that will benefit everyone. So it's definitely the top 3 artifact spells in my opinion. Now, another artifact spell that's very good is the Surging spell. The Surging spell, you will definitely use this. The reason I like this spell very much is because if you are running a more glass cannon comp, or if for whatever reason are forced to run a team that doesn't have Wilder faction talents activated for the conceal ability, the Surging spell kind of is a pseudo conceal in the sense that you get really chunky periodic shields along with some decent damage and stat boosts. Another artifact and this is one of the top 3 as well, is Storm Strike spell. The reason why this spell is so good is because it cumulatively causes like an HP loss on the enemies, and you decrease their ability to heal themselves, and also replenish energy for their ultimate. Yeah, this is like a Satrana / burial in a bottle, along with some HP drain as well. It's very powerful. And then another honorable mention would be the Blade Summon spell, although I don't really see anyone running this, especially nowadays. Essentially what this is you get true damage. It's kind of like the Star Shard spell. You deal periodic true damage. You're also lowering their physical and magic defense. So it just makes it easier to defeat the enemies. So if I was to rank all of these, I would say the top 3 artifact spells are the Surging spell, Harmonic spell, Storm Strike spell. There are special cases where you will run the Light Forge spell, and that's pretty much it. I wouldn't really recommend any of the other spells if I'm, to be frank with you here. Alright, let's briefly talk about Magic V++ charms. As of this recording, we have about 2 to 3 weeks left of the Chains of Eternity season, and for this reason, there is no excuse to not have a full set of V++ charms for all 15 heroes that you are using in Supreme Arena. So, if I was to go here, for example, you'll get these special sets. Typically, you unlock this during the final month and a half or final 2 months of the end of every season. And essentially, if say I was to take a look at Smokey's charms here, if you have a complete set of 3, say like sorcery charms, your Smokey in this case will, in addition to the basic stats provided from the individual magic charm pieces, you also get a sorcery set bonus that is unique to the sorcery set, ultimate power and skill power is increased. So what is that exactly? When you go into your smoky skills, you probably will notice that there is a green effect which happens regardless, and there's an additional blue effect. And so it's saying here, for instance, he will heal an additional 15% with each point of ultimate power gained. And earlier we saw that the sorcery set provided ultimate power of 4, right? So you basically multiply the 15% by 4. So in this case, he would heal the allies within his aroma for 170% plus an additional 15 times 4, that's 60. So instead of 170, he's healing for 230%. And then for the skills, in this case, if he has a sorcery set, he increases the attack of allies within the aroma by 16% plus an additional 4%, right? Because he has 4 skill power thanks to the full sorcery charm set. So he's increasing the attack percent of his allies by 20% in total, or I guess in this case 24%. Yes, so Magic V++ charm sets are not to be underestimated. Even the worst charm sets, such as, let me show you the bear charm, which I have equipped to Ulmus. Even the worst magic charm sets, if you complete the full set, has a big impact. Like for instance, the bear charm set increases his HP by 36% and vitality by 20. So I mean, even this is quite impactful. 36%, this is like almost an artifact spell boost, in terms of stats. I mean, this charm set is even more than what each of these charm fragments provide individually. So don't forget to have a full charm set. This is especially important if you are fighting people who are above your weight class in terms of paragons. For instance, just not calling out my guildmate, but like if he's going to attack someone who has more paragons for him, he really should, complete his magic charm set. I'm going to nudge him a little bit. If you don't care about completing your Magic V++ charm set in Supreme Arena, you're basically saying you're leaving a lot of potential on the table, So anyways, I digress. Okay, so now let's move on to the most viable Supreme Arena heroes from every season. Now, for those of you who watched my my Standard Arena video, you will know that I basically broke down the most viable heroes released from every season. And I'm going to do the same thing here. Okay, so kind of in summary for, just a general overview, there are, we have 3 seasons that have been released up until this point. We have Chains of Eternity, which is right now, Waves of Intrigue was Season 2, Song of Strife was Season 1, and then we had pre-season, right? So in Chains of Eternity, we have 5 viable Supreme Arena heroes. Those heroes are the twins, Cryonaia, Athalia, Cyran, and Lorson. Okay, and honorable mentions would be Faramore. Here's Faramore, Shamira, and Callan. Okay, so 5 viables, 3 honorable mentions. Now, for Waves of Intrigue, there's 3 viable heroes and 3 honorable mentions. So the viable heroes from Waves of Intrigue are Dunlingr, Tasi, and Bonnie. Okay, and honorable mentions are Harok, Sonia, and Lenya. And you'll notice that these honorable mentions are a bit different from the ones from Standard Arena if you watched my video yesterday. And the reason for this is, like we mentioned before, the Wilder faction talent is the strongest. Being able to make up to two of your glass cannons invincible for the first 10 seconds of battle, as well as, CC immune, and also being able to re-shield themselves after the conceal goes off, and being able to re-trigger the conceal, by the way, for an additional 3 to 4 seconds when I think you like KO someone. It's quite ridiculous. So for this reason, the Wilder factions, there's certain heroes like Lenya in particular that become extra viable to help you get to the magic number of minimum 3 Wilder heroes in order to activate the conceal. Okay, now moving on to Song of Strife, there are 5 viable heroes and 0 honorable mentions. So for Song of Strife, Fresto is one viable hero, Talene is another viable hero, Lily May is another one, Olmus has greater impact in Supreme Arena compared to Standard Arena, and then finally Ludovic. Yeah, so these are the 5 viable heroes from the Song of Strife season. And then finally we have 7 viable heroes from preseason and 8 honorable mentions from preseason. So actually there's more heroes viable from preseason in Supreme Arena compared to Standard Arena. And so the 7 viable preseason heroes are Rainier, Scarlita, Sylvina, Sylvina, Thorin, Odie. I was kind of debating whether to make him viable versus honorable mention. He's on the cusp of being an honorable mention, but his kit is just too good, being able to delete enemies. Damien and Haywin. And Haywin, I would say, is more viable, almost a mandatory hero in Supreme Arena compared to Standard Arena. And then there is going to be 8 honorable mentions. One would be Diurnal, and that's thanks to both the Lightforge spell as well as the Harmonic spell. He actually has 2 viable artifacts, spells that allow him to shine. And thanks to Diurnal, there are other viable like a Leica, right? Because the temporary buffs for Diurnal. Got Brian. Brian is actually even more important than Niru now, because you want to activate the Wilder faction talents if possible to bait, and also bait Lily May ult cancels. Got Smokey, and the reason why Smokey's an honorable mention is because of Diurnal, right? The temporary attack buff. Rowan because of the extra energy to go over the top with, say, like a Cryonaia. Got Vala, thanks to, the concealed tiles from the Wilder faction, and, her synergy with Sylvina and Rainier in jumping and deleting an enemy. Igor, Slowby, one of my good friends, made a point that Igor is a good counter to Athalia, because Igor can cheat death multiple times. And then finally Niru mainly to bait Lily May's ult cancel, but he can also provide a little bit of sustain for your party. So in total, out of the 78 heroes that have been released in this game up until this point, we have 20 viable heroes, 14 honorable mentions, for a combined 34 heroes out of the 78 that you would consider for Supreme Arena if you wanted to be competitive. Competitive in the sense that you are top 20 or top 100 in Supreme Arena. So essentially about 43% of the heroes available right now are in contention for a slot in your Supreme Arena formation. Just kind of food for thought here, this is actually less than in Standard Arena. If you watched my video yesterday, 40 out of 78 of the heroes were viable or for contention for a Standard Arena slot. Now, why is this the case? How is it that Supreme Arena, which has more, let's say, hero slots, would have less usable heroes? The reason for this is because Supreme Arena has more broken combos. If you, like in Standard Arena, it is possible to delete the enemy within 20 seconds, but in Supreme Arena, you can most definitely do it. And so for this reason, it's less forgiving. Like, your heroes need to bring their A game to Supreme Arena, and this is the reason why there's less heroes that I would recommend for you for Supreme Arena. Alright, so let's get to the fun stuff. Team formations. Now, the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to do like a tier list for teams. Say like there's S tier, A tier, which are the best teams, and then there's C and D tiers, which aren't that great. To save, to respect your time, I'm not going to go over any C or D tier teams because I don't think it's very helpful to tell you what teams are not great. I'll just tell you what's really good. So, arguably, the top performing team in Supreme Arena right now is some flavor of a Talene, Tasi, Damien comp. And when you do the team formation, some people, they'll put Tasi in front, but in my opinion, you really should run Talene in the front, because Talene, yeah, both of these heroes do revive, but Talene, I would say, has more revives than Tasi. And Tasi also has a specific requirement in order to gain the ability to revive. I think it has something to do with her ability to pick up KOs, but I'm not entirely sure. But regardless, though, this team formation is quite common. Essentially, you have Talene tanking for the rest of the team, notably Tasi. Tassi's going to be the beneficiary of the Pyre of Renewal. You see that flame above Tasi. Essentially what happens is that Tasi, when she gets KO'd, will consume the Pyre of Renewal blessing in order to revive. So Talene is essentially giving Tasi an additional revive on top of the standard 3 that she normally has. And then you have Damien, whose magic charm set allows him to grant a 50% shield and 45 energy on hit for 8 seconds to the ally placed in front of him, which in this case will be Tasi, who you want to go over the top with her ultimate in order to put enemies to sleep for 4 seconds and just snowball into a quick victory. Yes. And then to round out the team, you would run Bonnie as another attrition DPS, casting aging magic on the enemies to decrease their haste over time. And then the 5th slot will be a Wilder healer, or you could do Aaron, although from my personal experience, the best hero to put in the 5th slot would be a healer. Haywin is the 2nd best Wilder healer to put in the 5th slot, because the combination of Damien and Haywin is quite good for keeping the team alive. However, if you want to have like a triple S tier team that is basically unbeatable, then you would, instead of Haywin, you would go Lorson instead. So, and the reason for this is because Lorson, he provides multiple buffs in the form of haste as well as attack, if memory serves me right. Plus, he is also a DPS healer. Yeah, and he also protects the weakest ally and provides them 50 dodge, where they just cannot be hit. They have a chance to not be hit by a normal attack, extra haste, recovering extra HP. There should be a part where he gives extra haste to the enemy. I think it was his skill 1. Let me see here. Anyways, he provides attack and haste. If I... Oh, wait. I'm sorry. No. He reduces haste of the opponent. Yeah, so he synergizes very well with Bonnie. Okay, there was some sort of haste advantage there. Yeah, so DPS healer with debuffing capabilities. I could have sworn he buffed as well. But regardless, this is the absolute best team, and then you would run Storm Strike spell to provide some defensive penetration, but more importantly, to decrease their vitality, decrease their haste, right? So this is a third way to decrease their haste, and you do HP percent damage on the enemies. So this team is capable of deleting enemies within seconds. However, even though this is the absolute best Supreme Arena team you can make, realistically, you will put Lorson on a different team and you will put Haywin here instead. Because it's better to have 2 S tier teams than to have a triple S tier team and an A tier team, right? Because if the enemy can pick up a KO, I mean, that's already terrible. You ideally want to have a 3-0 on defense. 3-0 win on defense. Okay, so now that we've talked about that, let's go over the second best team, which is actually... it's a toss-up between a Cryonaia team and an Athalia team. Now, mind you, I'm still working on my Athalia. See, like, even whales can't fully build every hero. But if I was to build an Athalia team, what I probably would do is I will still run the Fresto Twins shell, and then the third Celestial Hypogean, would be an Athalia, and at that point the 4th and 5th slot are incredibly flex. If you want a reliable healer, I would highly recommend Ludovic, because Ludovic is probably the most powerful front-loaded healer out there, who also happens to do HP percentage damage. I would say of the healers, Ludovic, Lorson, and Smokey are probably the most powerful if you want additional damage from them. But yes, Ludovic is quite good, especially considering that Athalia runs around all over the place, and he has the ability to move his healing field to different parts of the map. Okay, and then for the 5th slot, it's also very flex. I really like Lily May. Lily May is so easy to slot in. You could arguably save Lily May on another team that needs a really strong Wilder to complete the Wilder set. However, Lily May is very good here because Athalia, even though she hits very hard, you want to complement her with another sub DPS such as Cryonaia or Lily May. Now there is also merit to putting Scarlita here. The maps this week are incredibly wonky to the point where it's very difficult on any of these maps to have the twins have more than one hero within its constellation. For this reason, I opted to take Scarlita out and put Lily May in. This team is probably easier for people to create anyways. Yeah, but if you don't have Athalia, Harok is a decent alternative. A lot of free-to-play players will have Harok built if they've been playing since day one, because Harok is a viable Dream Realm hero. And thanks to the combination of the 2 Pesto tanks, you can keep Harok alive fairly well, and you would run the Surging spell. And this was what I was talking about earlier. For your non-Wilder team, you will run the Surging spell. I recommend that you run 2 Wilder teams and 1 Celestial Hypogean team if you can. Okay, so the Athalia team that I mentioned before would be the second best team. Now, I forgot to mention there is also merit to running a Dunlingr here. I mean, this is like Omega Whale territory, even I can't do this. But if you really just want to shut down the enemies, what you would do is probably something like this. Because Athalia, even though her ultimate is pretty good, her non-ultimate damage is good enough to where if you shut down everyone's ultimate, you should come up on top. Especially with the supplemental damage of the pestos. And there's enough tanking in this team to where your Athalia is fairly safe. You want to keep her out of lance form as long as you possibly can. Okay, so this I would say is like an S tier. You can also have greedier Athalia comps where instead of Dunlingr, you're taking another win condition out of another team, such as Cyran. So Cyran, in my opinion, you should really run Cyran on a third team. But if you wanted to have like a really solid Athalia comp, you could probably do something like this and maybe reposition the heroes a little bit to protect Cyran, say like this, for example, in order to have another win condition, plus improve the survivability of your Athalia by silencing the enemy's artifact spell for 8 seconds. Okay, yeah, so plenty of options there. And then for the third team, you would run a Cryonaia comp. And the Cryonaia comp, there's like different ways to do it. Essentially what you would do is you would run Cryonaia with a in a Wilder shell. So this is the Wilder shell I recommend. I particularly like Cyran here because Ulmus you get extra value from your Ulmus, right? Because Ulmus, the way he works is that he is a tank that anytime you displace the enemy with any sort of effect, such as Aaron's ultimate or Cyran's ultimate, right? It also immobilizes the enemy for an additional 2 seconds. So it's like an additional crowd control. So, at the start of battle, your Aaron will, crowd control. If the opposing enemy has a Lily May, it's a little bit more problematic, if you have a tanky enough Aaron, he should survive. And then you have Lorson as a very good solo healer that provides supplemental DPS. Yeah, so as you can see here with the Wilder faction, kind of like with this one here, you either put your prized DPS there or you have a prized healer there. So in this case, I put my prized DPSs, my Cryonaia, as well as my Cyran on the glowy tiles. That way they are invincible for the first 8 seconds of the battle. And then I would do something like a harmonic spell to give them a ton of offensive and defensive stat boosts. Yes. So the teams that I mentioned already, so this team would be like an S tier team. This team I would also consider an S tier team, and then the Athalia comp, if you have it hyper refined, will also be an S tier team. And then there's not really much else that I would recommend. Any sort of A tier team would be some sort of variation of these 3 teams that I mentioned in front of you. So that's pretty much it for this video. When in doubt, take advantage of everything that the game provides for you. Try to pick the Wilder faction talent if you can. Pick the 5 artifacts that I mentioned to you, specifically the Surging spell, the Harmonic spell, and the Storm Strike spell. Just pick these 3. Put the Surging spell on the non-Wilder team. Make sure you're completing your set of V++ charms. That's pretty much it. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care, guys.